Trainers, we're here for top 4 at Balance Patch. This is our January challenge. My name is Gabby Snyder. I'm joined by Jake Major, and yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I don't think either of these two players that are coming up in our top 4 match have been on stream today, so I haven't gotten a quick sec to even review these teams. But it looks like we're going into a Kyogre mirror match.
We are.
Going back to when we were playing. With, two Kyogres with two good support systems around them to make sure their mental health is great.
Mental health, yes.
Yeah,
Anyways, Chris is going to be our player 1 here. Apologies for having a little fun. It's officially silly o'clock here at Balance Patch. Is going to be running what I would say is a more traditional Kyogre support team, as you do have the synergy with the Tornadus Incarnate and the Urshifu Rapid Strike form. What makes this team a little bit more unique is the fact that there's Chien-Pao, there's a Rillaboom with Drum Beating, which may be something that Chris picked up from the Birmingham stream earlier on today, in addition to Farigiraf as just your anti-Trick Room Pokemon.
Yeah, and notably that Farigiraf being Terra Ground, which we saw pretty early on from Aaron Trailer and Rajan Ball on their team at Indianapolis. But that was for Miraidon Discharge spam. This time it looks like to just be anti-Miraidon.
Yeah.
Where you have this Terra Ground option with Terra Blast, probably picking up, I don't know about a one-hit KO, but either coming close or just putting on that pressure, as well as Foul Play, Helping Hand for that Kyogre. Really good Tail Room option here. And Kyogre, probably if I had to pick one restricted that really works in Tail Room, it's Kyogre.
For sure. And I mean, that access to Tail Room, or the combination of Tailwind and Trick Room, is something that will not be available to Chris's opponent, Anthony, who is also running a Kyogre, admittedly, and you may notice that the Kyogre looks very similar to Chris's own Kyogre, at least from the open team sheets perspective. Instead of having that Farigiraf option for Trick Room and a more slower mode of play, there is Serena, who does also block priority moves, however, brings a much different approach to the matchup with Power Whip and Triple Axle, threatening a bit more damage, and Helping Hand and Taunt as well being the support moves of choice.
Yeah, and Wide Lens, so that Power Whip shouldn't miss too often, and Triple Axle also shouldn't miss too often. It can, it shouldn't. And Terra Ice for that damage. And I mean, speaking of silly o'clock, it looks like Anthony and Chris are having a lot of fun too. That's what I love about locals, is just this is just pure Pokemon fun. At the end of the day, we're all buddies, and I love it here.
Exactly. I mean, you have to be friends if you're playing Pokemon at 10 of 9. I mean, this is like regional hours back in the day.
Yeah.
But in addition to the Kyogre and the Serena, there is also a Tornadus Incarnate on Anthony's side of the field. There is a Rillaboom, however, this is a more traditional take. I say traditional in quotation marks, as I don't think Terra Ground High Horsepower is necessarily common on that Pokemon, but Assault Vest is.
2 Terra Grounds in this match.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see either of them.
No,
Jake.
not in Kyogre.
No, and then you also have the Life Orb on that Urshifu alongside of Chien-Pao.
Yeah, neat shout I want to take right here is both of these Tornadus opting not to run Bleak Windstorm, opting to run Hurricane, and I think that's a symptom of so many Zamazenta being around running Wide Guard.
Yes.
That when Kyogre can't do the water damage it wants to, at least Tornadus can do something. So picking and choosing your option of offense here and not just getting shut down by Wide Guard, I think that's a very, very wise choice in this situation if you're not running both for some reason.
I also really like how these Tornadus have Rain Dance for the Hurricane as well. It doesn't necessarily come up in this matchup as we are ready to get into game number 1. However, it does mean you don't have to worry about the decreased accuracy chance that Hurricane has in the sunlight. But the rain will certainly be falling on the field for these trainers here today, as it's going to be a wild weather showdown.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, we're getting snow here any colder in this game, and it would be a nice snowstorm, but we are not going to see that. We are just going to see a drizzle here as Tornadus and Kyogre hit the field for Anthony, and Urshifu and Tornadus hit the field for Chris. 2 offensive water types hitting on the opposite ends of the spectrum and doing completely different things from one another. With that Choice Scarf, this Urshifu is always going to be the fastest thing on the field. and both of these Tornadus probably just wanting to opt to go for Tailwinds.
I'm very curious to see the speed interactions between these two Tornadus, as there could be a speed tie if they are both running max speed, for example, or there could be some other interactions here at play. So unfortunately, we won't be able to pick up on that initially, but what we will be able to pick up on is the fact that the Urshifu is really primed to go on the offense here, and I'm very curious if this Kyogre is going to be able to return the same offensive pressure that this Choice Scarf Urshifu will have with the Surging Strikes connecting into the opposing Tornadus for 3 hits and a KO.
Yeah. So this Tornadus is going to be removed from play. I think it was interesting. Chris did have an opportunity here to potentially stagger the Tailwinds.
Yes.
Because Urshifu's able to hit through Protect, Chris could have gone for Protect on his own Tornadus. Although this Water Spout obviously doing a lot of damage, almost picking up the 1-hit KO on Urshifu, could have allowed him to have 1 extra turn of speed later in this game, especially considering the fact that Anthony's not carrying Taunt on his Tornadus. So it was a pretty free, not free, but it was an option to go for.
It was, and that could be a good Game 2 adaptation to pay attention to. Though, for now, both these trainers are able to send out their next Pokemons with the benefit of the speed control on the field, and we are going to see the opposing Urshifu out on the field for Anthony against the Rillaboom for Chris.
Yeah, it looks like Chris is almost playing 1 turn behind Anthony in this case. You know, you bring out, or Anthony's playing 1 behind Chris, where you bring out the Kyogre and Tornadus, I bring out my Urshifu, I bring out my Rillaboom, and Anthony could have his Rillaboom in back if he has a Rillaboom. I believe he does.
He does, yes. It's that Assault Vest.
Chris could have a Kyogre in back, and they could have the same 4 Pokemon just staggered. It's very interesting to see. But either way, Chris looking to be at an advantage here with the Choice Scarf Urshifu, going to be able to outspeed Anthony's. However, being able to change up moves here for Anthony as it just hit the field, Aqua Jet likely to come out unless Chris makes the switch. But that Rillaboom is really, really huge here, threatening KOs on either of Anthony's Pokemon unless he opts to Terra one of them, which I would not be shocked to see coming over to this motorcycle-helmed trainer.
Are you sure it's not Sandwich legendary helmed?
It might be.
I don't think motorcycles exist in this universe. But it will be Kyogre on Anthony's side of the field with that Grass-type Terastallization to bring the ability to resist any Water-type attacks. Will not happen this turn as Anthony gets in on that Water Spout action.
We're having fun.
And that's Pokemon for you at the end of the day. Water Spout notably doing about 50% of health's worth of damage to both the Pokemon on Chris's side of the field.
Yeah, interesting to go for a Fake Out on a switch.
Yeah.
Maybe protecting against a potential... I mean, Aqua Jet was, I feel like, Anthony's only realistic play to go for there. So I don't necessarily agree with the Fake Out there. I think that easily could have been a Grass move into either the Kyogre or the Urshifu slot. If not, most likely should have been a Fake Out into the Kyogre slot, because I would assume an Aqua Jet would come out. I mean, half a dozen of one, 6 of another, really.
Yeah, and it's also possible that these trainers have played each other before, you know, if not here today, but in practice, and could be making these predictions based off of those tendencies. For now, though, Surging Strikes will be moving first, attacking into this Rillaboom. The 3rd hit will bring it down, and we'll get that KO. So unfortunately for Chris, it will just be that Kyogre on the field left for him this turn. And again, good opportunity here to see the speed interactions between these two Kyogres. We see Anthony's Kyogre go first, once again going for that Water Spout, and thanks to the single target damage boost, that is enough to pick up the KO.
Yeah, so Chris, really, unfortunately for him, not taking advantage of a pretty huge trump card in this matchup, being that Rillaboom. That's a Pokemon that really wants to see the field and take advantage of its turns, but only getting off a Fake Out and then getting knocked out very quickly is not what you want to see if you're Chris. And at this point, you know, you likely brought the same 4 Pokemon, at least you brought the same 3. You're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how you can play this one out just a bit better to avoid the Life Orb Urshifu being able to swap up its moves versus the Scarf Urshifu moving first, but being locked into that choice that you made.
And at the end of the day as well, you have to remember that the most impactful thing the Urshifu did was that KO on the Tornadus in the first turn.
Yeah.
So you're not even necessarily making the trade that you want to there. And I think as a result, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Urshifu take a backseat in this game too. I would personally say try to run the same lead back, or well, maybe what you saw from your opponent, sorry. So the Kyogre and the Tornadus, try and maybe force that grass-type Terrestrialization almost, and then have the Chien-Pao in the back to sort of then threaten the Kyogre. But this game is not just about the Pokemon on the paper. I do think that because it's a mirror and because these trainers have presumably practiced a lot together, we're seeing a lot of the mind games kind of come through in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another shout is because Anthony has Tornadus and no Trick Room like Chris does, it could be valuable for Chris to try to lean into the Trick Room mode. Yes, Anthony would have to set up the Tailwind for there to be some advantage with the Trick Room, but if you can force that out of him, you can be up really, really nicely going into this game.
Again, it all comes down to those speeds, and I wish that we had more information, particularly about the two Kyogre interactions, because if that is an indication of how they're trained, that would be a great adjustment, just recognizing, you know, maybe Trick Room will give me a bit more of an advantage.
Yeah.
But we saw them face off against each other a couple of times in that last matchup. I usually like to say 3 times the charm in terms of figuring out if something's a speed tie or not. But this will be the second game, and while we do see that Kyogre lead from Anthony, there will be no Kyogre on the field for Chris. Instead, it will be the Rillaboom with the Tornadus as a bound.
Yeah, so we're in a precarious situation, right? Rillaboom threatening Kyogre. Kyogre threatening Terrestrialization. Tornadus threatening Hurricane on Rillaboom. Tornadus on Chris's side, very afraid of another Water Spout from Splash Plate Kyogre, as we saw in that game 1, was just a clean one-hit KO. Not many things survive that, certainly not a Billion Lions.
For sure, and you also have to worry then about, well, what do I do if my opponent just goes straight for that Terrestrialization plus the Tailwind so they outspeed? So I do think that Chris is on the back foot in this regard. Could always try to go for the fake out, at least onto the opposing Kyogre to buy himself some time, but that's exactly why we see Anthony lock into Protect on the first turn in that slot.
Yeah, so Anthony not being threatened by anything on this, well, a KO on Tornadus on this turn 1 allows him to not have to go for the Tailwind here. But if there is confusion, maybe having to deal with that, nope. Hurricane coming out onto Rillaboom, thanks to the Assault Vest, going to be able to hang right on there. And now I think both players are sort of forced to go for their Tailwinds here. Both got a decent amount out of this turn, but I would definitely say Anthony is ahead in the fact that he has done so much damage to this Rillaboom, which is such a huge threat to Kyogre. Just, you know, it's immediate prey.
It is, but you do still have to ask the question of, okay, if these two Tornaduses get their Tailwinds up, or if a Grassy Glide connects with a Kyogre and it doesn't Terrestrialize, just how much damage will that Water Spout then do? I think there is still a bit of a mind game here, as I think both these trainers are trying to decide, you know, is it worth investing that Terrestrialization? Is it worth just going for that damage on the opposing Pokemon? And with the start of this animation, we do get confirmation that once again Anthony is going for the Grass-type Terrestrialization on Kyogre.
Yeah, and I'm curious how fast this Rillaboom is as well. There is a chance that Rillaboom can outspeed Kyogre. I have no idea if it will. But we just see a Tornadus Tailwind from Chris's side. Would be shocked to not see it from Anthony's side, as we do see them matching. Tailwind doesn't want to be behind in this matchup. And now the question is, who moves first? It's actually the Rillaboom that moves faster than this Kyogre, and is going to be able to get a Drum Beating off for a decent amount of damage, but more crucially, slow it down.
Exactly, and this is the adaptation that I believe Chris might have borrowed from the Birmingham stream earlier, as Oliver Escalin was running a very fast Rillaboom. It's easy to forget, as for so long in VGC, trainers have invested in the health and the defenses of Rillaboom. You know, maybe in the attack if you're running one of those Grassy Seed variants, or I'm sorry, Miracle Seed variants of Rillaboom. But in this case, no, it's all speed. You're able to outspeed, connect Drum Beating to drop the speed one stage, and now that the Urshifu and Chien-Pao are on the field, they're in a really great spot to, again, start threatening some big damage. Unfortunately for Chris, the Urshifu is still holding that Choice Scarf, which means you have a very critical decision to make this turn. but at least you're looking pretty comfortable, all things considered, assuming you can hit an Icicle Crash.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as Icicle Crash connects, you should be taking 2 KOs in this match. The question is, what move does Chris lock into? If he locks into Surging Strikes, he might not be able to do enough damage to a potential Urshifu in back or a Rillaboom in back, but if he locks into Close Combat, he might not have the damage output to take out what is likely a very bulky Tornadus.
Yeah.
So Chris has a decision to make, and I would guess that Close Combat isn't going to KO, but a Terra Water Surging Strikes might be good enough for later in this game.
It might, but that's not necessarily a decision you have to make on this turn. You know, I think that it's great that Urshifu's going to have the damage boosted because of it. There's also still Rain active on the field, which is pretty huge. But I do wonder if you could have waited one turn. You know, still locking the Surging Strikes, of course, so your opponent doesn't have to protect. But then at least give yourself the option to maybe terrestrialize your Chien-Pao if you're worried about some sort of fighting type attack or a fake out flinch later on in the match.
Absolutely. In the moment of truth for Chris here, will this Icicle Crash connect into the Kyogre? It certainly will. And Kyogre will be removed from this game, losing its terrestrialization, losing its will to fight in the rest of this game. And the question is, what does Anthony have in the back? If we see this Rillaboom, it might be an uphill battle for Chris. And if it's also another Urshifu, gonna have to deal with a probably one-hit KO into this Chien-Pao thanks to the Life Orb and thanks to the Rain. But most importantly, this Rillaboom has a very, very active and very, very crucial fake out here that can go right into Chien-Pao, remove its Focus Sash, and more critically, make it not move for this turn.
Exactly, and that's why I do think waiting one more turn on the terrestrialization would have been key for Chris in this situation. I still would have to play around 2 very threatening Pokemon on Anthony's side of the field, but at least wouldn't have to worry about, okay, I have to flinch. It's not like you can protect in front of an Urshifu anyways, because that Surging Strikes will break your protect and still pick up the KO through the Focus Sash.
Yeah, you absolutely needed that Ghost Terra here to be able to survive the Fake Out plus the Surging Strikes. There's no Chien-Pao that I know of that can take a Rain-boosted, Life Orb-boosted Surging Strikes. So with that Fake Out pressure and Chien-Pao not being able to protect in front of Urshifu, that is likely going to be the Chien-Pao taken out here. But Urshifu, from Chris's side, with that Terra Water, with the Rain doing a very substantial amount to Rillaboom, and we are going to see Anthony's follow-up. Chien-Pao cannot move thanks to that Fake Out. And Surging Strikes, almost one-hit KO. Gets a 2-hit KO very, very cleanly. And the question on everybody's minds right now is, can Chris's Terra Water Surging Strikes deal with an Urshifu and a Rillaboom fast enough? I'm guessing no, because of Rillaboom's access to Grassy Glide. It could come close, but we'll find out right now. Grassy Glide goes into the Urshifu, does a ton of damage, and that's looking like it's in Surging Strikes range. Surging Strikes coming out from Chris's. Urshifu is going to be able to get this knockout on the Rillaboom, as Anthony is likely going to be able to finish this up with a Close Combat. You know, he can switch up those moves thanks to not being choiced in. And
I don't know, Anthony's like, I think he's trying to pantomime the attack. Wait
yep.
for it. There he goes.
There he goes. And Anthony shadow boxing, but that Urshifu surely
Oh no,
wasn't.
Chris got KO'd too.
And that was a fun match to watch. I do think, Gabby, you are absolutely right that Terra did need to wait just one turn. Expert shout there. Had Chris just waited that one additional turn, been a little more patient with that Terra, he would have still been in that game. But there was just no chance of...
sure.
If you can't protect in front of a Fake Out, or if you can't avoid a Fake Out, you're getting knocked out by Urshifu.
Yeah, and that's why Urshifu is once again at the top of the rankings, I think. It's just the combination of that board pressure, and then you also throw in some of the restricteds on top of that, and there's just not a lot you can do.
Yeah, not a lot of Pokemon break the rules, but Urshifu certainly can, and it's been getting away with it for too long.
Okay, well, why don't you go chase after Urshifu then for breaking the rules?
I'm going
to. Okay.
But after this, we will be back with finals. I believe that is it for me on the day. Thank you to Balance Packs for having me, and we'll see you for finals.